Think about how long some stories stick around, you know?
Mhm.
Thousands of years later, certain myths are still, well, they're still shaping how we see things.
Absolutely.
Today, we're really diving headfirst into one of the absolute biggest, the foundational story the Romans themselves told about, well, where they came from.
Yeah, exactly. We're digging into the legend of Aeneas, the
Mm.
founding of Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And our main source here is a great article that really walks through this huge, influential epic, the one Virgil famously wrote down in the Aeneid, which, Emperor Augustus himself actually commissioned.
Right, which is key, isn't it? Because this isn't just like a fun adventure story.
Not at all.
This was absolutely fundamental to what it meant to be Roman. Their origins, their destiny, it was all tied up in this narrative.
Completely.
So for you, the learner, our mission today is basically to pull out the most important bits, the really fascinating nuggets from this huge story.
Yeah, give you the core elements.
Exactly. Key events, the big characters, the main ideas,
Yeah.
without getting totally bogged down. Because let's face it, the Aeneid is pretty long.
It is. Definitely epic in scale.
Okay, so where does this massive story actually kick off? What's the starting point?
Well, like a lot of powerful origin stories, it really starts with destruction. The fall of Troy.
Ah.
Yeah, after that long, brutal war, their greatest hero, Hector, is dead. And Aeneas, he kind of steps up to lead what's left of the Trojans. Even that hints at Roman ideas, leadership carrying on the line.
And the fall itself. That's the famous Trojan horse story, right?
Yeah.
The article must cover that deception.
Oh, yeah, it does. The Greeks pretend to sail away, leave this giant wooden horse.
The gift.
Right, the gift. The Trojans, thinking they've finally won, drag it inside the city walls. Huge mistake, obviously.
Because it's full of Greek soldiers.
Yep. Hidden inside. Middle of the night, they creep out, open the gates, and, well, it's a total massacre. Troy is finished, burned to the ground.
It's just devastating.
Mm-hmm.
And right in the middle of all that chaos, Aeneas gets some kind of message, a divine nudge.
Exactly. As the city is burning, Hector's spirit appears to him in a dream.
Wow.
And Hector basically tells him, look, you need to save the sacred relics of Troy, the symbols of our people, and you need to find a new city. Go west.
So that's the mission.
Mm-hmm.
Find a new home for the Trojans.
That's the core mission, yeah. It sets him off on this epic journey. It's all about preserving their heritage, finding this divinely chosen future.
So he grabs the important stuff, the people. Who makes it out with him?
He manages to get his father, Anchises, out. Anchises is old, so Aeneas actually carries him.
Right, that famous image.
Yeah, and he leads his young son, Ascanius. But tragically, his wife, Creusa, gets lost in the confusion.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and her spirit appears later, too, telling him, basically, don't look back, you have to fulfill your destiny. It really highlights the personal cost. It's not just saving people, it's saving a whole legacy.
That's a huge burden to carry. Okay, so they escape Troy's ruins, but they don't have, like, a map to New Troy, do they?
No, definitely not. The article talks about their initial confusion. They sail off, land in a few places, Thrace, Delos, Crete. They're trying to figure out where they're actually supposed to go.
Sort of wandering.
Kind of wandering, yeah. This part really emphasizes how much fate and prophecy guide them. They're searching for signs.
And eventually they get a clearer sign. Something points them definitively westward.
Absolutely. Through visions, oracles, they're told to head for Hesperia, which is, Italy.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Hesperia is Italy.
Yes, and this land is revealed as their true ancestral home. So that's the moment the goal becomes clear. Italy, that's where they need to be.
Gotcha. Italy's the promised land. But getting there,
Yeah.
not exactly smooth sailing, I imagine. The article probably lists a bunch of challenges.
Oh, absolutely fraught with danger. Both, normal sea dangers and supernatural stuff.
Like what?
Well, in Thrace, they run into the ghost of Polydorus, who warns them about treachery there. Bad start. It's not ideal.
Then they encounter the Harpies, these nasty bird women creatures,
Uh-huh.
and they curse Aeneas and his men, saying they'll get so hungry they'll end up eating their own tables.
Eating their tables. Okay, that sounds weird.
It does sound really weird, but it's one of those classic ancient prophecies,
Yeah.
Seems bizarre, maybe symbolic, but it actually gets fulfilled later in a very practical, literal way. Reinforces that whole destiny is unavoidable idea.
Okay, I'm curious how that plays out later. What other trials do they face?
Well, there's a stop on the island of the Cyclops. Remember Polyphemus?
From the Odyssey?
Exactly. They actually find a Greek sailor, Odysseus, left behind. It's a neat little crossover, connects Aeneas' story to Homer's.
Clever.
And then they have to navigate between Scylla and Charybdis, the sea monster, and the giant whirlpool. classic perils.
Man, talk about a rough trip. And I remember reading they suffer personal losses along the way, too, besides Carusa.
Yes, that's right. Before they even get to Italy, Aeneas's father, Anchises, dies.
Yeah. The article mentions the funeral rites they perform. It really grounds the epic journey in, human grief and sacrifice. It's not just about destiny, it's about the personal toll.
It's definitely not all monsters and prophecies, though. There's that very famous episode in Carthage, right, with Queen Dido.
Ah, yes. The big romantic and ultimately tragic interlude.
Tell us about that.
So, Aeneas gets blown off course, lands in North Africa in Libya, and there he meets Dido, the queen who's building her own new city, Carthage. She's strong, impressive.
And there's immediate chemistry, or
Yeah.
maybe divine intervention.
Definitely divine intervention. Aeneas' mother, the goddess Venus, she worries about his safety there, so she sends Cupid, her son.
The god of love.
Yep, sends him, disguised, to make Dido fall madly in love with Aeneas.
Okay, so it's an engineered romance, in a way, but it becomes real for them.
Oh, it becomes very real. The article describes it as a passionate affair. For a while, it really looks like Aeneas might just stay there. Forget Italy, forget the prophecy.
But the gods wouldn't let that happen, I guess.
Nope. Jupiter, king of the gods, steps in. Sends Mercury down to remind Aeneas, hey, remember your destiny, Italy, founding a great nation, duty calls.
Ouch. That can't have gone down well with Dido.
Not at all. She's absolutely heartbroken, furious, feels betrayed. Aeneas tries to explain, but,
Hard to explain, the gods told me to leave you.
Exactly. So he prepares to leave secretly. When Dido finds out, she just completely loses it. She unleashes this terrible curse on Aeneas and all his descendants,
Roll.
predicting eternal hatred between their peoples. And then, tragically, she kills herself.
That's intense. And the article connects this directly to history.
It does. Crucially, this myth becomes the legendary explanation for why Rome and Carthage became such bitter enemies later on. The Punic Wars, Hannibal. All of it supposedly traces back to this tragic love affair.
Wow. So a personal tragedy becomes the seed of a massive historical conflict.
Yeah.
Okay, so after leaving Carthage, he finally makes it to Italy.
He does. There's a quick stop back in Sicily first. Interestingly, some of the Trojans, the older ones, the ones who are just exhausted by years of travel, they decide to stay there.
Can't really blame them.
No, it shows the toll the journey took. But Aeneas pushes on and finally, lands in Latium, Italy.
And the table-eating prophecy. Does that happen now?
It does, and it's actually kind of mundane, almost funny. They're so hungry and tired, they lay out their food on these big, flat, round pieces of hard bread, like plates, basically.
Makeshift plates?
Yeah, and once they've eaten the food on top, they're still hungry, so they eat the bread plates too. And Ascanius, Aeneas' son, jokes, look, we're even eating our tables.
Huh. Okay, that's a surprisingly simple fulfillment.
Right. Aeneas realizes the Harpies' curse has been fulfilled, and they've truly arrived at their destined land.
So they've arrived.
Yeah.
Prophecy fulfilled. Is it smooth sailing from here? Do they just start building Rome?
Not quite that simple. They actually get a pretty good initial welcome from the local king, King Latinus. Latinus has heard prophecies about foreigners arriving who are destined to marry into his family. So he sees Aeneas and thinks, this is the guy. And he offers Aeneas the hand of his daughter, Lavinia.
Sounds perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like destiny is finally on their side.
It seems that way.
But there's always a but.
There's always a but. Lavinia was already promised to someone else, a local hero, a prince named Turnus.
Ah, the rival suitor.
Exactly. And Turnus is not happy about this Trojan newcomer stealing his bride-to-be.
Understandable.
And compounding the problem, the goddess Juno. Still holding that ancient grudge against the Trojans from, way back before the Trojan War.
She just won't let it go.
She will not. She sees Aeneas about to succeed and decides to stir up trouble. She sends down Alecto, one of the Furies, these terrifying spirits of vengeance and rage.
Oh, great. What does Alecto do?
Basically fans the flames of resentment, gets into Turnus's head, gets into the head of Queen Amata, Latinus's wife, who preferred Turnus anyway, stirs up hatred against the Trojans.
So the peace doesn't last long. How does war actually break out?
The article mentions a specific spark. It's actually over a deer. A pet deer, beloved by the locals, gets accidentally shot by Ascanius while he's hunting.
Oh, like a symbolic incident.
Exactly. It seems small, but with all the tension Alecto stirred up, it's enough. Tempers flare, skirmishes start, and soon it's full-blown war between the Trojans and the Latins, led by Turnus.
And Turnus musters allies.
Oh, yeah. He rallies other Italian cities and leaders, including, notably, Camilla. She's this incredible warrior maiden, super fast, deadly in battle, devoted to the goddess Diana, or Artemis.
Sounds like Aeneas has a serious fight on his hands. Does he get any more help from the gods? From Venus?
He does. Venus goes to her husband Vulcan, the blacksmith god,
Right, the god of the forge.
and gets him to craft Aeneas this amazing set of divine armor. And the shield is incredible. The article points this out. It actually depicts scenes from Rome's future glory.
Like Romulus and Remus. Augustus.
All of it. Major battles, triumphs. It's like a prophecy forged in metal, a huge morale booster, and a sign of divine backing.
But I thought the gods were meant to stop interfering directly.
Well, yes. Jupiter does eventually lay down the law. He basically says, okay, Olympians, no more direct meddling. Let the humans sort this out now. It raises the stakes for Aeneas and Turnus.
But Juno gets one last condition in, right? Something important about Roman culture.
Exactly. Juno finally accepts she can't stop Aeneas from winning. But she makes Jupiter promise that the Trojans won't impose their Trojan identity on Italy.
Meaning?
Meaning, the new nation will be Roman, yes, but it will take its language, its customs, its name from the Latins. They won't just be New Troy, it'll be a blend.
So that's the mythical origin of Rome being Latin, but with this Trojan ancestry.
Precisely. It's a really key compromise that explains Rome's identity as they saw it.
Okay, so the gods step back, the cultural compromise is set. The war continues. Any standout moments or heroes we should know about from the fighting?
Definitely. The article mentions Camilla, the warrior maiden. Her story is pretty epic, very heroic, but ultimately tragic. She's incredibly skilled but falls in battle.
A big loss for Turnus' side.
Huge. And there's also Mezentius. He's this sort of cruel former king fighting for Turnus. But then his young son, Lausus, dies trying to protect him.
Oh, wow.
And Mezentius is just overcome with grief. He goes out seeking Aeneas, basically wanting to die. It adds this layer of, honor, grief, the cost of war, really human moments.
So lots of heroism and tragedy on both sides. But eventually it has to end, right? It comes down to the leaders.
It does. After more fighting, they agree to a truce. The whole war will be decided by single combat. Aeneas versus Turnus.
The final showdown. Was Turnus eager for this?
He was. Reluctant, maybe sensing his fate, but pride, pressure, he agrees to fight. Aeneas, meanwhile, actually gets wounded just before the duel, but Venus helps heal him miraculously. More divine favor, perhaps.
Okay, so the duel begins. How does it go?
It's intense. Turnus fights bravely. But Aeneas, with his divine armor and, destiny on his side, starts to gain the upper hand. He wounds Turnus.
And Turnus is defeated.
Yes, he's down, defeated, and he actually begs Aeneas for mercy, asks him to spare his life. Think of his own aging father.
And Aeneas considers it.
He does. For a moment, he hesitates. He sees Turnus pleading, but then his eyes fall on something Turnus is wearing.
What is it?
It's a sword belt. But not just any belt, it belonged to young Pallas.
Pallas. Who was he?
Pallas was the son of an ally of Aeneas, a young prince Aeneas was mentoring, almost like a son. Turnus killed Pallas earlier in the war and stripped this belt off him as a trophy.
Oh, so seeing that belt.
It changes everything. All the grief, the rage over Pallas's death just boils up in Aeneas. Any thought of mercy vanishes. It becomes about vengeance, about justice for Pallas.
He makes the final decision.
He does. Filled with fury, remembering Pallas, he plunges his sword into Turnus, killing him. The war is over. Destiny is sealed.
Wow. A really powerful and kind of brutal ending to the conflict. So, with Turnus gone, peace is finally achieved.
Yes. Aeneas can now marry Lavinia, uniting the Trojans and the Latins. He becomes king in Latium.
But that's not quite Rome yet, is it?
Not quite. His son, Ascanius, also called Iulus, importantly.
Iulus, like Julius Caesar.
Exactly. That connection is crucial. Ascanius, or Iulus, goes on to found the city of Alba Longa. And Alba Longa, according to the legend, is the mother city of Rome. Romulus and Remus come from the royal line of Alba Longa centuries later.
Ah, okay. So it creates this direct line. Aeneas, Ascanius, Alba Longa, Romulus, and Remus, Rome.
Precisely. And that Iulus connection was incredibly important for figures like Julius Caesar and especially Augustus. It allowed them to claim direct descent from Aeneas and therefore from Venus, from the gods themselves. It was huge for legitimizing their power.
So this isn't just an origin story for Rome, it's an origin story for its emperors, too. Looking back at the whole epic, then, what are the really big themes, the deeper meanings we should take away?
Well, there's definitely that constant tension, isn't there, between like divine will, fate, and Aeneas's own human emotions and desires. He's always being pulled between duty and personal feelings, like with Dido.
Yeah, definitely.
And the whole story is just saturated with prophecy, with the idea that destiny is this powerful, almost unavoidable force-shaping
All
events.
right.
The myth also works to explain, as we said, where Rome's specific culture came from, this mix of Trojan grit and Latin tradition.
That Juno compromise.
Exactly. And figures like Juno and even Dido, in a way, they kind of represent the obstacles, the resistance that fate and Rome had to overcome to achieve its greatness.
Okay, so summing it all up,
Hmm.
the journey of Aeneas, it's way more than just an adventure. It's the bedrock of Roman identity. It explains their origins, their sense of destiny, how fate and the gods and human choices all tangle together.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's packed with triumph, yeah, but also so much tragedy. It really defined how Romans saw themselves and their role in the world.
So for you, the learner, maybe something to think about after this deep dive. How does a story like this one ancient, filled with gods, heroes, victory, loss, how does it still echo today? When we think about ideas like national identity or destiny, or even just the burdens of leadership, what parts of Aeneas's long, hard journey to found Rome still feel, well, relevant, still make you think about our own world? Definitely something worth chewing on.